Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the new episode of Collaborative Show by the Circle of Legends. Today, we are here with two very inspirational, very inspiring people, Mr. Madhu and Mr. Abhinav, who are
Hello.
co-founders of Inspiring Ideas podcast. So, hello, how are you doing?
Fantastic. Thank you so much. Thanks for having us today. I'd like to start
Thank
with
you
a
very much.
disclaimer. So the
Yeah,
views expressed by Abhinav and I are purely our own and do not represent any of our current organization that we work for or previous organizations with whom we have worked. Okay. I'd like
that
to
is
start with
completely understandable. Yeah.
Thank you for that. So I'd like to start with a brief introduction of us and what are the key moments in our life that has come to fruition. Okay. Um,
Mhm.
so this is my 19th year in the IT industry, and I've worked across Australia, India, UK, specifically London and Scotland, and the
Yeah.
US. And I migrated to Australia in 2015, and I
Mm.
remember very very clearly that I didn't know anyone in the country and without a job. And I'm currently working in a big corporate, and my love for artificial intelligence is so heavy. And I mentor different industry leaders across manufacturing, oil and gas, mining, insurance, and telecom, etc. Uh, my three key moments in my life, after a couple of years in the software industry, obviously I was not happy with what I'm doing because I very clearly know what I'm doing from Monday to Friday. So that's when
Mm.
one of my people lead came to me and said, maybe you should change. So from
Yeah.
that moment, I realized that every couple of years I needed a little bit of change so that
Mm.
it's not mundane. That was one of the key moment, I would say. The second one being migrating to Australia. As I said, knowing no one in the country, landing in the plane
Mhm.
without a job, that was really daunting. So that was my second moment. And before I move on to the third one, let's hear from Abhi first.
Yeah, hi there. Hi, everyone. Yeah, that's great. So my story is very similar to Madhu's story. So I've worked about 17, 18 years in the software industry, worked with different companies, migrated to Australia in 2013, and currently I'm working with a multinational company. Beyond my job, I love playing table tennis. So anyone who's watching and loves table tennis and is in Melbourne, would happy to play with you. In terms of life-changing moments, one was very early part of my career, and I started working a few years down the line. I was not very happy, and then I ended up seeing a very interesting movie. It was a Bollywood movie called Life in a Metro, and I don't know what happened after seeing that movie. I decided to quit my job. Okay, so next day I go to office and give my resignation to my boss, and he's very surprised. What's wrong with this guy? But it was good in a way because then I got into a good company and my career took off from there. The other one was I was well settled in an IT company in India, in Bombay. And then I got my permanent residency for Australia. And I had to think about what should I do? Should I stick around here or should I migrate to Australia? So I actually migrated to Australia without a job and started all over again. So these are the two key moments of my life. Now, before we go on to the next one, which is, of course, about our podcast, but I would give it back to Madhu. Can you share the story of the podcast? That how did we end up starting this podcast?
Absolutely, Abhi. So Abhi
And
and I
can we
have
move
been,
to the next slide, please? Sorry, slide number 2.
yeah. So it all started with a phone call. So Abhi and I have been associated for almost 5 years. We used to work together previously, and what we do is whilst we are having coffees. So coffee is so popular in Australia. So while we are having coffees, what we do is wherever we see some superstars within our organization, we call them for a coffee and ask them what is their secret sauce. Why they are so successful. So we kept doing this, and for years and years we kept doing this. And then with COVID, obviously we are not able to go to the office, and we're all stuck at home. And from March we have been working from home, thanks to technology advancement and all that. But I thought I definitely missed this coffee catch up because the learning was so huge. And I told Abhi, I made a phone call to Abhi, and Abhi did not even pick up my call for 2 or 3 times. I felt this guy is going to pick up my call at least for the next time, and he did not either. And then finally he rings back after say 2 days, and then
Yeah.
he calls me, hey, what's happening, man? I've been flooded with a lot of work and all that. Wow. Okay, man. So this is the idea, and we have been doing this. I'm definitely missing our coffee catch up. Let's actually start our podcast. Then he said, "Hang on, hang on, hang on. What is podcast?" And I told him some nuances of podcast, and I told with for 15 to 20 minutes, and then I shared him a few links, and then I was very hopeful that he's going to say yes, let's do it, because there's always a saying, when you are doing it alone, you need to find intrinsic motivation, but when you're doing it together, there's always that extrinsic motivation that comes through. So what I personally thought was we should be doing it together so that we can be more accountable. And he did not respond. He said, Madhu, give me 24 hours. I'm going to come back to you. And then the story goes to Abhi.
Yeah, so absolutely. Let's move on to the next slide. So the reason I asked for 24 hours because I wanted to know more about podcasting. What is it all about? And I'm definitely, I worked with Madhu earlier, and I know that if he comes up with an idea, that will be a lot of commitment. So I just wanted to be 100% sure that is this something that I wanted to do. And I'm kind of I'm a business analyst. So I thought, okay, let me look at some numbers. So what I did was I did a lot of research looking at who the podcasters are, what they do, okay, and get some, are people actually listening to podcasts? And I come up with a lot of numbers, a lot of information in next 24 hours researching. I put some of the information in this slide out here. And if you look at the slides, there are some really interesting insights coming out of it. If you look at it in US, there are more than 144 million podcast listeners in US. And what they do is that when they're exercising or when they're going for a walk or they clean their house, they listen to the podcast.
Yeah.
Okay. And podcast is also generating a lot of revenue, okay, for podcasters. So last year, there was more than $500 million spent in podcast advertising. The other thing which really stuck for me was that attention span of people who are listening to the podcast. Like I thought it would be 3 to 5 minutes, but interestingly, I found that people who are listening to podcasts, they listen it to more than 30 to 40 minutes. So that's really, really good, if you want to engage with your audience. So that was really, really good factors. But the next thing which was important for me to make a decision was that what is the opportunity for me if I want to work on starting a podcast. So there are three key opportunities for me, sorry. So I'll go with the second and third one first. First, I felt there's a great opportunity for me to learn and grow my skills. Of course, it's a great opportunity for me to build my brand. But I was a bit concerned about the first one because the first one is about challenging yourself, working outside the comfort zone. And that's where I was feeling a bit vulnerable because, when you do a podcast, when you put your content out, people are going to judge you all the time. So I had a few butterflies in my stomach at that stage. What about you, Madhu?
I completely resonate what you're saying. And the fear of public speaking, that's the number one fear in the whole world. And we are still humans, right? So obviously we will get
Yeah.
that butterfly. And then the other bit that I would say is the fear of rejection. Why would someone come and talk in your podcast? Why would they agree, right? And the more we realized about these things, yes, people can reject us 10 times, 15 times, it's fine, but we keep trying. I think the having that growth mindset and then having that incremental improvement for every single episode that we do, because we only do this in the weekend, right? We all have day
Yeah.
jobs. So it's very important that we use our weekends so well and with a positive mindset and with incremental improvement, and then the world is all yours. So that's how I see it.
Yeah. And by the way, I said yes.
You better say yes.
I love that. I love that there was so much positivity and there was like this sort of courage that you guys even took and you defied even right now while presenting the very slide. Abhinav sir actually defied the fact that it's in order and he said, I'm going to take up 2 and 3 first. So
Yeah.
I love that very personality. So could you tell us more about this as to why exactly or how exactly did you particularly come up with the idea of a podcast? Why not go for something else?
That's a good point. So there are a number
Can we
of
move
ways.
on to slide number 3 and we can answer that question there?
Yeah.
Yeah, if you look at the Inspiring Ideas podcast, for people who are seeing on the left-hand side, there are 3 points, and the right-hand side, there are 3 points. So left-hand side talks about the what of Inspiring Ideas, and then the right-hand side talks about the benefits. So let me quickly share the what. So if you look at the first point, Yeah, they share industry leaders, life stories, and success formulas. If you look at any podcast, it's very rare that people share their life stories and then they
Yeah.
talk about the subject matter. But when you try to combine those two together, because everyone starts from zero, right, any day, but it's about some of the decisions that they have made in their life, some of the key moments which have made them so successful in their life. So that's where we wanted to really unpack some of their some of those points. The second bit is about learning about the cutting edge technology, because we have to embrace technology. So I've got a very good acronym for that. We'll cover it after. But
Alright.
the more we embrace technology, we will be we are living in a world where we are so fascinated with the amount of enhancements that have made in technology. So if we can embrace it and use it to our advantage, we'll be hugely successful, be it as an individual, or if we are having our own startups, so it's even more powerful.
Mm.
The third one is the exposure to the startup ecosystem. So you'd see a lot more startups coming through. It's a startup ecosystem that has been built in the world with COVID. COVID also has helped us tremendously create a number of startups. So how can we leverage and understand some of these 3 points is what our podcast is all about. How about can you talk about the benefits, Abhi?
Yeah, absolutely. Sure. So, when we were thinking about the benefits, we're thinking from our audience perspective. And it's very important to talk about our current circumstances where a lot of people's jobs have been impacted or they're looking for new career opportunities.
Yeah.
And it's very difficult to get guidance sometimes. So, we thought our podcast should help to people to learn and grow and help them to take their career to the next level. Okay. And the second more important thing is that how can they identify new career trends which are out there? So it should help them to understand about what's happening in AI, data science, or IoT, or other cutting edge technology fields. And more importantly, today, if you want to find job or you want to grow in your life, you need to build up your network. So these were the three key things that we wanted to give as a benefit for our audience who are listening to our podcast. And I've got a couple of very interesting stories that were shared with to us from our listeners. So one of my friend calls me up and he's really excited. And I said, why are you so excited? And he's saying, hey, I've registered my company today and I'm starting a startup. Okay. And I'm like, oh, that's fantastic. And he said, thanks for your podcast. I was listening to your podcast and I got inspired. I had this idea for last 6 months or so, but never took that first step. And after listening to the podcast, I've taken that step. So that was a really fantastic story. The other one was one of my friend called up and said, hey, thank you very much. I said, what? I had a job interview and I cracked it and I've got a job. So I said, that's
Wow.
fine, but why are you thanking us? He's like, I actually was listening to one of the podcasts from Rishi Desai who talks about AI strategy implementation. Okay.
Mm.
And I got some great learning out of it. And I used some of those points in the interview and I ended up getting the job. So, I'm like, that's just so pure pleasure for us to hear these great stories people are sharing with us of all the benefits they're deriving out of listening to our podcast.
There are more stories as well, so we have just
Absolutely.
packaged the top two. Okay.
That sounds
uh,
good. Yeah, would you like to go ahead, Mr. Madhu?
Next slide, please.
Yeah.
Uh, all right. So this particular slide talks about. So we have done close to 10 episodes, and there are another 10 in production. So what we have seen is there is a set of common themes that have come up in terms of what people have done in their life, and their advices for students, aspiring students, or people who are young professionals who want to get their career up to the next level. Yeah, I would like to start with the first one, which is travel and read books. So this is no brainer. Now we can't travel, that's a different issue. But if everything gets opened up, this feel free to travel. And when you're young, if you keep traveling across the globe, there's a higher chance for you to understand the different cultures, different traditions, different ways of working, and get to meet a lot of people, right? So you understand the different perspectives and you can become more empathetic. So you will be hugely successful if you are traveling across. At the same time, you need to combine that with reading books. So it's extremely vital if you start reading books early. This is one particular episode where we interview Vainab Chowdhury, is a 20-year-old millionaire who talks about the importance of reading books. What he says is he will challenge himself by reading at least 100 pages a day, then slowly he increased to 200 pages. It could be anything, could be genre, could be anything, but you need to give it a start early on in your life. As long as your brain is getting that amount of processing capacity, the more you grow, you can actually expand and read about any book of any genre. Then you should be able to process it much faster. You can be a speed reader. The more you read, the more you are able to talk well and then implement some of the successes. So that is a very important aspect. The second important aspect is, Abhi, you want to go?
Yeah, absolutely. Challenge yourself. I think that's very, very important. And talking to all these experts, they had such amazing stories where they were faced with some obstacles in their life and they have challenged themselves, and either, started their own company or, done something else in their life. And I remember Sean Flynn from Silicon Valley. He was sharing one of his insights that he actually migrated to China, and he reached China. He didn't know the language. He didn't know anyone out there, and started his company, which became very successful. And now he's back in Silicon Valley, and he had to start all over again, and he built his empire all over again. So that's really fantastic. So you need to challenge yourself all the time. And the most important thing about challenging yourself is you need to start. I think that's very critical because a lot of people have great idea, but they never take any steps, to get started. So that's really important.
Right. The third one is embrace technology. I think we talked about it earlier as well. So, right, how do you teach a children when they start to feel that okay, they are ready for school, right? So you teach them A, B, C, D, isn't it? So I have the same acronym here for A, B, C, D. A for artificial intelligence, B for blockchain, C for cloud, and D for data. So these are the four essential skills in terms of embracing technology. So if you can know to an extent that you are able to navigate this technological world, that's good enough. You don't have to be a superstar developer. For example, from 2015, I was not a developer, I was a business analyst. But however, the passion for technology, knowing the nuances of technology, is what is vital for anybody to have a career growth. And even if you take an example of an X-ray technician, and you were talking about implementation of an AI solution, you still need that SME, and it's about how that subject matter expert is contributing to the technology is vital. So anyone
Yeah.
can get into technology as long as they've got that appreciation. Number 4, Abhi.
Yeah, build your brand. I think that's very important. Now, we always invest and buy expensive brand products, right? We do that. But what we forget to do is that we do not invest in our own self or creating our own brand. Now, how to create a own brand is a really big topic, and we can cover it some other day. But it's really, really important that you build your own brand about who you are. Okay, how are you different from others? What values do you have, and how you can provide benefits to the people around you, to the organization that you're working with, or with the community that you belong to. So that's really important. So building your brand is another key important ingredient to get success.
Yeah. And number 5 is always a saying in my growing up years. My dad used to say, build something that will last, right? But the new terminology for that would be build something that can adapt. Right?
Yeah.
Adaptability and learnability are the two key traits which anyone, students listening, professionals listening, please adapt yourself for any kind of changes. And the COVID or other situations might come through, but you can always foolproof yourself by embracing and adapting some of the changes that are currently happening. You can go with the flow. There's a very small story that I would like to end with.
Yeah.
There's see, learning and adapting. If you look at it, there was a village, and the village had lot of floods, and people were really confused. There was no technology, what to do. So what they did was they got a Japanese architecture. They devised a wonderful bridge, okay, and so that the river can actually flow underneath it. But the cyclone came. They built a wonderful, very strong bridge, and cyclone came and smashed the entire village. Ultimately, the bridge being strong, it was strong and it was standing tall. But however, all the other township and villages are lost, right? So it's
Yes.
important to understand and get adapted yourself. This was one of the stories that was shared by one of our guests, Dhiren Velu. That
Yeah,
was so
Wow.
fantastic
powerful.
story. And just to
Yeah.
add to that, Madhu, what we do for our Inspiring Idea podcast is that we always are looking for incremental benefits or improvements that you can do. So every time we come up with the episode, me and Madhu will go about listening to it and dissecting it and saying what worked, what has not worked, and what we can do to make it better next time. Okay, so that's something that we always focus on. Okay, so that we can improve over a period of time. So these are
And
some
we
key 5 points to cover.
absolutely, and we learnt a lot, right, in the last 2 months or so. So, be it sound editing, video graphics, and whatnot. So, it's very important that you are spending your weekends more fruitfully.
Wow, that's great. I mean, the dedication is truly visible right here through these little but like very crisp slides, I would say. And
Thank you.
I think we still have a little bit of time for a few questions. So,
Absolutely.
yeah, can we please have the questions on screen?
Yeah.
All right. So, the first one, let's see. Importance of traveling and reading books have been beautifully explained. That's just a comment. Okay. So
Thank you.
yeah, I actually thought that as well. I think
Thank
the
you.
fact that reading was mentioned and many people don't really prefer reading, that's a big thing, and I will keep that in mind. I am a
Sure.
beginner from Dr. Roy. I am a beginner when it comes to podcasting. Do you have any tips on what kind of equipment I should be using in terms of mic or lighting or even background?
Sure thing. So we'll give a very quick summary of that. So lighting, you don't have to worry about it. So normal lighting would be good enough. And in terms of the mic, you can go with. So this is the one that I'm using, which is Blue Yeti. And I always argue with Abhi. He's having something Samsung, if I'm not wrong.
Samsung satellite, I think I'll strongly recommend it. They're not paying me, but the reason
Nah.
is it's a satellite. It will take you up to the stars. So please go for this mic.
So when you have such competent people, there's always a thing that you would end up giving the best. So yeah, I mean, you can Google, but these two are definitely something that I would suggest for a beginner.
For a beginner, yeah.
And then you can always use other podcast hosting channels like Anchor. Is a good starting point because it's free, and Podbean is another one.
May we have the next question? How do you choose the topic of podcasts? That's a good question.
Yes.
Please,
So
yeah.
as I said, there are two or three key themes that we wanted to really focus on, right? So first is startups. Then we talk about emerging tech. Then we talk about somebody who has traveled their life and they've failed a lot, and then how we can combine these three together is what we would generally look at. But we do a lot of research. So one Saturday we do complete research, and then the next Saturday we do the podcasting. So when we say do the research, we talk to the guests, we look through some of their earlier podcasts, we look through is there any new thing that has that is hidden that we wanted to share it to people, because we don't want to share the same message again and again. So it's very important that we diversify, but at the same time we get the gold nugget out of it.
Yeah, and just one small tip, which is very important for your podcast, is that you need to work a lot on your script. Like with us, we create 3 versions of script, and we, share it with our guest, and and review it and update it so that it's relevant, it's important, and it adds some value for our audience. So it's very very critical for you if you're starting a podcast.
So I have one last question before we go. Since the both of you mentioned that reading is so important, is there any recommendation for our viewers that they should start with something that is easy, but at the same time it guides you to better books?
So my suggestion would be start early. For example, I'm suggesting my 11 and a half years old son to start with making. I'm not able to remember it exactly. Think and Grow Rich. Yeah, that's the one. But I'm reading Thinking Fast, Thinking Slow.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah.
Nice. What about you, Mr. Abhinav?
Well, I love reading, and I think as long as you're reading, that's great. But people who do not want to do not like reading books, you can always tune into our podcast.
All right.
Mhm.
So we do have one more question that we
Sure.
found was important. Miss Lakshmi Devi is actually asking you, all your podcasts are inspiring. Yes, that's correct. Which one inspired you the most, and do you have any specific quotes that you would like to highlight for today?
You want to go, Abhi, first?
Well, I think my favorite was we had Fabio Zamata. He's an IT faculty with RMIT. And one of the interesting stories he shared about that when he was 7 years old on his birthday, his mother asked him that, "Do you want a bike or do you want a computer?" And
Mm.
he decided to go for a computer, and then he said, "Rest is history." He got hooked onto it, and you build a career around it. So that was something very very interesting for me.
Wow.
The one that
What?
I resonated the most for me is, if you have given a choice between a camel and a unicorn, choose a camel, because during tough situations it retains water, and then it starts to run for days to days, and then it will go and find the water. But if you are a unicorn, you will be a one time wonder, and then you'll get died down. So it's very important to adapt. Yeah.
That's a really that particular symbolism means a lot. Wow. Oh, we have another question. The questions don't stop. Okay, so I think we'll let this be the last one. What was your motivation behind starting Inspiring Ideas? I think they're probably talking about like who got the first thought and exactly when in time did it start?
That's correct. Yeah, so I did ring up Abhi, as I told in the beginning. So it's
Yeah.
very important to understand that you can have the learning mindset and adapting mindset. I keep telling that all the time, but it's extremely crucial for us all to understand and progress. So once I had that spark, but if you can have a very good partnership with another person that you can be, joining your journey, it's you will be hugely successful. Anything to add, Abhi?
No, I think that's really true. And for me, very important is what I love about inspiring ideas. That every day we're learning something new,
Yeah.
and that's just enjoy to be part of this whole journey. And talking to people, learning from them and sharing ideas. Like that's just amazing.
Beautiful.
Wow. Thank you, the both of you. Thank you so much for joining us today on the Circle of Legends collaborative show. I think this was truly, this truly matches the name of your podcast. It was inspiring, and we heard your success stories, and they were very funny as well. I love that. So, is there anything that you both would like to end off with before we, have to leave?
Yeah, I just wanted to say huge thanks to TCOL first, and Darshan and team, and to you, Janvi. And secondly, if you can go and subscribe to our channel in LinkedIn, Inspiring Ideas. We will share it post in the comment section, and at the same time, we are across all the podcasting channels like Spotify, Apple, Google, and whatnot. So feel free to listen to those gold nuggets from different industry leaders, and I'm 100% confident that it will help you in your career growth, and you will be hugely successful in your life. All the very best, my friends.
All the best, guys.
Thank you so much. Thank you, audience, for being so into this and so active. And we will see you guys next time. Thank you so
Bye.
much.
Thank you.
Bye
See ya.
bye.
Bye.